Creepers left and right, buzz like crazy. Everybody's trying to stimulate it. Spiders in the mirror and feel this can't be right. Back to the scene of a Friday night, to a blessed collision still frozen tight. Spirit drinkers, Cupid and the sound of her first chime. And why did you argue? We're dreaming of those eyes, the best part of my life.
Hello my friends. Hello my friends. I'm gonna try and film a vlog on my phone and just see how it goes. So I thought I would start a vlog today, even if this is just for one book, which it very well may be, because in the last video that I put out, I talked about where I'd been, and I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who messaged me, commented, and just showed me so much love on that post. I appreciate you all so much. It made me just so happy, and it just made my day, and I just am so thankful for that. So I mentioned it was a chapter of 3 Kindle Unlimited romances, and the book I picked to go with was Restore Me, which is the book I'm currently reading. So I stayed up way too late last night in the dark, couldn't sleep, reading this book. And I felt like I was reading a lot, like for a while, and I'm still only 60% of the way through. This is a very long book, and I don't mind that at all. I am enjoying that, and I think that's entirely because I am very invested in these characters. I am loving this story. I am living for this romance. Oh my gosh, I love this book so much. I cannot even handle how much I love it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I've been feeling about reading this year. I have had a lot of reading slumps this year, more than I have in a very long time. The last time I had like such a succession of back-to-back reading slumps, I just kind of stopped reading for several years, and I don't want to do that this time. So having this break where I wasn't making content, and I wasn't feeling that sort of internalized pressure that I have, that most content creators I think have to some extent, where you want to make content that you think people are going to watch, that people are going to like, because it is time consuming, and it's you don't want nobody to watch it. You want people to watch the videos that you make. So anyway, having that little break and not feeling that internalized pressure to read a certain way has allowed me to read books that I haven't picked up in several years. So like I read a YA fantasy, Belladonna, which I adored. I thought that was fantastic. I think that is one of the best YA fantasies that I've read in a very long time. I really loved it. It's a Death in the Maiden retelling. It's a little bit mysterious, has great like spooky vibes, has a little bit of a historical feel to it too. Absolutely beautiful writing, great characters, but my favorite part of that one was the tension between Death and Signa, the heroine. Like, oh my gosh, it was so good. I want that in an adult romance. And which brings me to my next point, that I feel like this year for me, so many of the indie romance books that have been published this year are lacking, severely lacking on sexual tension. They are all smut straight from the get-go, which I talked about in my last video, and I just don't like that. I don't like that. I do not care about smut. I don't care how good it is. If I'm not invested in the characters, in their relationship, if there's no feeling of tension, I could care less about that. So something that Restore Me is doing so well is it's just dripping with sexual tension. And you get little moments where it's relieved a little bit, and then it's like the pressure just keeps cranking back up, and it's so good. But the thing that is very impressive to me about this book is that she is handling some moments in here that are steamy, but they are also full of intimacy, full of vulnerability, full of these two people who are trying to have this relationship, and they're just sort of barely starting to trust one another and work into that, and it's just so beautiful and so lovely. And the way that this author is able to make me feel the chemistry between these two, like when they first touch, the way she differentiates how it feels when they touch in something that is almost a platonic gesture versus when she touches another man that she's like got a date with, and how normal and like zero chemistry is felt there is just like blowing my mind. I am deeply impressed with this author. I am so impressed with this book. At this point, this is going to be in my top 10 of the year. And now I have 40% of the book to go, and I am like crossing my fingers that it doesn't get ruined. I don't think it will, because I think that the people that I feel similarly with, like, they absolutely love this book, specifically Beth, who I'd mentioned in my other video. Like, she is the one who actually told me about this book, and I am just having the best time reading it. It is giving me swoon. This hero is so swoony. The things he does to win this woman, the amount of times he talks about she's mine in a very loving, tender, protective way, just like is sending me to another stratosphere. Like, I am obsessed with this. This author has so much talent, and I just like, I am a fan. I am a fan for life. I don't want to compare this author's writing to anybody, but I will say that for me, I think her writing is approaching a Kennedy Ryan level, where she manages that intimacy, heat, emotion so well, while also dealing with heavy topics. And now I realize I haven't told you anything about what this book is about. So this is a contemporary romance. This is a Black romance, and it is the love story, the romance of our heroine, Sloane, who is a widow. She's been a widow for 4 years. She deeply loved her husband and her husband's best friend. Now, this is so layered and interesting because the very first chapter, prologue, is in the past, and that is how Sloane and Dominic, our hero of this book, so her dead husband's best friend, they meet. But there's a reason why Sloane doesn't remember that meeting and Dominic does, and it just has such an impact on him. It's almost like a love at first sight. This is a sweeping romance that spans decades, where he has just pined for her. Oh my gosh, and he has masked his feelings and love for her with this antagonism. So it's not quite an enemies to lovers, and I don't think it's meant to be. But there are, in the beginning, when they first meet, there's an antagonism between them, and that is entirely because he is trying to keep her at arm's length and push down his feelings for her. And she doesn't really know why he has this antagonistic feelings between her. She just knows that he's been a jerk to her, and she doesn't like him. So when things start to happen between them, when he starts to sort of thaw and let that antagonistic facade go, she starts to see this other side of him, and she's like, maybe I, misread him this whole time. So this is a beautiful book, and I love everything about it. I am obsessed with it. I want to live in these pages. I haven't felt like this about a book. Gosh, I don't even remember the last time I felt this way about a book or a new author. I am just blown away by her talent. I am blown away at how she is so deft at making you feel every single thing that's happening on the page. Oh my goodness, I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with it. So that is my basic feelings so far. If I were to rate it right now, this would be a 6 out of 5 stars. Like, I am that impressed with it. I am absolutely in love with it. Now, and I'm not to say that this book is without flaws. I believe, I've been wrong before, but I do believe this is this author's debut book. I'll double check on that after I film this clip so that I don't just keep saying that and then you guys come in the comments and you're like, actually, this author has an extensive backlist. I would absolutely love it if this author did, because I know for sure she's got a second book in this series, but when I looked her up on Goodreads, I didn't see anything else. But again, I could be wrong. I'm just a girl sitting in front of a camera talking to you about a book I read. I'm not the ultimate authority. So anyway, this is the book I'm reading, and I'm just losing my mind over it, in love with it, and I want everyone to read it. It is very long, and like I said, I think that if you're a certain type of reader who wants your books to be very hot and heavy right away, with a lot of stuff happening, external stuff, kind of really, I don't want to say over the top, but if you're looking for a lot of action or a lot of stuff happening, you're not going to get that here. This is very, very character driven, very relationship driven, but in a way that isn't slow. I don't think it's slow. I mean, it has what I feel like a ton of potential for a soulmate epic romance, and I am obsessed with it. So unfortunately, I cannot read it. I just dropped my son off at school. I got my soda. That's right, this early. I stopped and got a soda because there's a soda shop right next to his school. And my husband's working from home today because he's sick. So I got us both drinks. Today, mine is Coke Zero, sugar-free vanilla, and raspberry puree. It's my favorite drink. It's called the Raspberry because we're close to Bear Lake, which is like on the Utah-Idaho border. We're not really close to it at all, but we're in Utah, and they're famous for raspberries. But anyway, I unfortunately cannot read today. I've got a ton of work to do. I have a doctor appointment this afternoon, but I will be reading it tonight. So I actually do have an audiobook. I'm in the middle of an audiobook, an Emma Scott audiobook, and I am liking it a lot, but I've really been in the mood for like fantasy, and I have also started Babel by R.F. Kuang. I want to give that book my full attention, and I have felt like my brain is not at the level where it can read and pay attention that much, so I feel like I've been needing something that is a little more fast-paced in my audiobooks, which is one reason why I've been reading so many thrillers lately. I've just been consuming them, mostly Karen Slaughter's, who I've just absolutely loved, and yeah. So anyway, now that I've spent 10 minutes talking to you, thank you for coming back to my channel, and we'll see how this vlog goes. I don't know. I am filming on my phone, did I tell you? I think I told you. I did tell you. Okay, I'm for real gonna go now, get to work, and if I pick an audiobook that's different, I'll tell you about what I'm reading next clip, but for sure, in this vlog, I'm gonna have my final thoughts on Restore Me, and hopefully one more, whatever audiobook that I decide to go with. So, thank you for watching, and I will see you in a bit. Hello, my friends. Okay, same spot, but I do have a book update for you. I have a new soda to try, and I have some book mail, so I'm excited. So I decided to go with the Emma Scott book. I was doing that thing where I was like starting a bunch of audiobooks, and I wasn't sure like which one I wanted to stick with because I felt like I was just like in the mood for everything, you know? And then like I did that so much that I got to the point where I'm like, I just have to finish one. I have to finish a book. And so I decided I'd go with the Emma Scott, which is Forever Right Now. Hopefully I'm saying that right, I just checked. And because it was the shortest one, and I was really enjoying the story. So I ended up really loving this. I gave this 5 stars. This is one of her backlist titles. It was, I think it came out in 2017. This was so good. I love Emma Scott. I think she's just wonderful. This book I felt like was really interesting because it did deal with some emotional aspects like she typically does, and that's why I like her. But I think that as far as like the discomfort in the hard emotions in this book was pretty minimal compared to definitely the one that she wrote this year, which I also loved, by the way. So I think that this book has a really good balance of those hard-hitting emotional subjects and lightheartedness, definitely swoony romance, lovely romance, and just a very fun, comforting read. And the happily ever after in here was absolutely adorable. So this book is basically about our heroine Darlene, who is, I think she's like 3 or 4 years clean. She was addicted to drugs. She had like a felony drug charge, and so she's required to go to these AA meetings, and she is a former dancer too. And like, I think most girls had a phase in life where they were dancers, myself included. I loved to dance, and then I ended up like falling in love with horses as a teenager, and I had to like choose, is it horses or dance? And of course I chose horses because I'm a horse girl. But I love reading books about dancers. I just think they're just so fun. So that was really a fun aspect of this book. So she is a dancer. She's living in New York. She wants to, now that she's clean and trying to like let go of that guilt for the bad decisions she's made in her past and try to have a new life for herself, she decides to move to San Francisco, where she's going to try and actually make a go of it as a dancer. She ends up finding, the reason she goes to San Francisco is she finds an apartment to sublet from one of her friends that is just a really great price, something she can't pass up. So she goes and moves there and ends up being next door neighbors with Sawyer, our hero, who is a single dad with a little baby who's 13 months old, and he is literally just the best daddy to this little girl. It is so adorable. Like, they have the scene where they meet at the grocery store, and he's like going out of his way to make sure his little girl has like organic strawberries and all these fruits, and she's kind of like starting to fuss in the store, and Darlene is like, why don't you just give her a snack? And he's like, no, I'm not gonna give her just garbage snacks, so she's gonna eat good food. It's just like so adorable. And Darlene is like, well, here are these like Zwieback baby toast that my mom gave me, and he checks the ingredients and he's like, oh, okay, yeah, those are good, she can have those. It was just like so cute. I love a single dad romance, and he was just a great dad. And Darlene really meshed well with the baby, and I just loved it. I love family romances like that. I'm a sucker for them, and that was a great aspect of it. So Sawyer is in law school, and he actually became the dad of, well, he didn't know he had this baby until a girl he hooked up with, had a one-night stand with, shows up on his doorstep like a year later with this 3-month-old baby, and is like, oh, by the way, this is your baby. And then she kind of just abandons them and goes about her merry way. So he raises this baby, this daughter, just completely devotes himself to her, and going to law school. He's about to pass the bar exam, and so he's under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress. He is trying to be a dad and get his degree so he can provide a good life for her, and both of them, both Darlene and Sawyer, are sort of in this moment where they're like, neither one, they don't say this to each other, but they're both like, no relationships, no casual relationships, no full relationships. I'm just going to focus on myself. And Sawyer's like, I'm going to focus on my baby daughter. But of course they meet, and they have such great chemistry and such a great connection. And it was very palpable and just really beautifully well done. The main conflict in this book too, there are like some secrets that, you know, she keeps from him because he's got a past with drug abuse and addiction, how it has affected his life, and so she doesn't want to tell him for a very, very, very long time about her past. And I was worried that was going to be like the main third act breakup. However, it wasn't, and the main conflict at the end is revolves around Olivia, the little baby. And there was a really beautiful happily ever after. This book was just, it went from being just pleasant and engaging to just heartwarming, and I was very invested in this couple getting their happily ever after, and I adored it. It was great. It was a full 5-star read. I think if you like a single dad romance, definitely check this up if you haven't already. Like I said, I feel like most people have probably read this, because when I put it on my Goodreads shelf, I think like all of my friends had who read Emma Scott or contemporary romance had already read it, but it was new to me and I adored it. I thought it was fantastic. This had so much charm and so much swoon and just so much heart that, again, on my soapbox, that I feel is lacking in the 2022 indie romances that are being published right now. Very disappointed in that. Anyway, really enjoyed that one. I don't really have anything to say about Restore Me because I've read some of it, but not enough to give you another update on it. So let's do a taste test of our drink. So today I went to Swig. Swig is the place I usually go to because they're easy to get in and out of with my truck, but I like Fizz better, which is the place that I had in my first clip. These are two of the soda shops that I have next to me, and they're my favorites. So this one is a Diet Mountain Dew with strawberry puree and mango puree. It's called a Bloody Wild. I've had this before. It's one of my favorite drinks. It's just so fruity and refreshing, and I just love it. Okay, now let's see the book mail. I know what this is. I did peek. I am so excited to have this physical copy. Like, this book means so, so much to me. I got an ARC copy of this. I've been talking to this author. This is published now. You can buy the ebook or the physical copy. It's called Finding Gene Kelly. It is a contemporary romance, and this hero is one of the best cinnamon roll heroes that I have ever read. He would literally do anything for the heroine, and it is just so swoony, and the way he takes care of her. This book does have a big emphasis on endometriosis, which is why I wanted to read it. That's one of the chronic illnesses that I have. And it was just really, really beautiful for me to read her experiences on the page. So a lot of this book is her dealing with that, with her chronic illness, and how that affects her love life, how that affects her mental health, and how that just affects her life. And I just felt so seen in this book. I loved it. I was able to do a 20-minute interview with the author on Instagram that was just a pure delight. So I loved and adored this book. I gave it 5 stars. It is a very fun, contemporary, swoony romance. I don't think it was too, like, I've heard a few people, both people who have chronic illnesses and who don't, say that they don't enjoy reading like books about chronic illness because it's either too close to home or it's too sad. And while I understand that feeling, that's you know, people who have chronic illnesses, it affects every aspect of our life every single day. And I loved reading it. I felt very uplifted by it. But my point in saying that is that this book felt very, like, it had really good lighthearted moments, fun moments, side by side with the chronic illness moments. So it wasn't ever like a complete downer for me. I just loved it, and I'm so happy to have a physical copy. This book is so beautiful. I love it so much. This is one of the few illustrated covers that I just adore. I'm so happy to have it. I'm so happy to have it. And look, there's a donut on the back. I love it so much. This is definitely going to be one of my favorite books of the year. And like I said, like, I am deeply invested in this personally, and so I was more than willing, if there were any flaws, I was willing to overlook them, because I have never read a book that has endometriosis representation this well done, and I just loved it so much. But also, the romance, the hero, Liam Kelly, like, he's fantastic. The way he takes care of her is just a beautiful thing. I loved it so much. So, there's my book mail for the day. I'm so happy. Okay, I'm gonna go in and get to work now, and the next update that I will give you will be my final thoughts on Restore Me for sure. So thanks for watching. I'll see y'all in my next clip.
The last breath of summer is blowing down our necks, and soon we'll wave goodbye to the fleeting bliss. Because you are like a tidal wave, ripping up my life and living without a trace. And you know that I'm your silent patient. You know I'm your silent patient.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back. Welcome back to the final clip of this vlog. I apologize that every single vlog clip that I have filmed has been in my truck, but you know, that's just how it goes. And honestly, like, I apologize because I feel like that's the polite thing to do, but really, I don't need to apologize for stuff like that, and I need to stop. Okay, let's move on. I'm so sorry. So, I finished Restore Me last night, and I can say with absolute certainty, this is going to be in my top 10 books of the year, and maybe probably in my top 5. Honestly, could be my top 3, could be my top favorite. I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and look at all of the books that I have loved this year. I know there has not been nearly as many as there was last year, but I am absolutely floored with how much I loved this book. This had every single thing that I want in a romance. Their love story, Dominic, or Dom, as Sloane calls him, that's her nickname for him, and it is a bit of a double entendre for sure. The way that Dom loves Sloane, the way that he has loved her from the moment they met when they were fresh college kids, just destroyed me, like, in the best way possible. He has loved this woman for 12 years, and he has constantly set his feelings aside because she didn't remember their first meeting. Even though they had like such a soul level connection, she remembered parts of it, but she always wrote it off to, it was a dream. I met this man, we had this great connection. It was nothing more than a dream. And so then she, almost immediately after that night, meets Dom's best friend Eric, who she marries, and they have a happy life, and then he ends up passing away. And so the main point of the book, I know I talked about this earlier, the main point of the book is her at this point, 4 years after her husband has died, and she is dealing with a lot of so this book does have aspects of her grieving her husband, but not in a way that is the focus of the book. Most of the focus of this book is Sloane and Dominic having their relationship, but Sloane does wrestle with the fact of moving on, but it's never in a way that feels overwhelming to me. It feels like just the right amount of, yeah, it would be incredibly difficult to move on with another man, both physically and, more importantly, emotionally with another man, when you have lost your husband who was the love of your life. But there is this very specific situation that happens that Sloane believes leads to Eric's death, that she feels a lot of guilt about. And so she's also struggling with those feelings too. And Dominic really helps her work through them. And I mean, like, I can't say enough things about this man. This man is my favorite hero I've read this year. He has the #1 spot for best hero. Like, just the amount of support he offered her, the amount of tenderness he had for her, how he was always there for her. And he also is struggling with some things from his childhood and his parents' relationship that has an impact on him his entire life. So he's not without his own set of trauma. But for me, in my personal taste, this is the exact amount of emotional work and trauma that I want to see in my books. Things that aren't over the top, things that could be real, but you don't dwell in those sad areas. The focus of the book is really healing and working past that, both individually and together. Like, their romance was so freaking beautiful. And a large part of this book, there was a point where I thought this might be a 4-star book, because a large portion of the middle is their physical relationship, because they enter into this deal where Dom is going to help Sloane sort of ease her touch-starved nature from being so lonely for so long. And something that I found really impressive with this book was how every intimate scene, every steamy scene was part of the story, part of their relationship development, that if you were to take those out, you would be missing huge chunks of their romance. So much work was happening in those intimate scenes, not only just in the way they talked to each other and the way that they acted towards one another, but also in the internal dialogue and thought process of each character. And something that this book does so well, that is one of the major reasons that I loved A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall, is how it deals with this very tentative form of intimacy where you want to trust this person, and you do, and you start out just sort of very gradually trusting them, and over time, as you start to see that that's a safe person to trust, more intimacy gets pulled back, so that you have this very, very beautiful, and in my mind, gradual evolving of an intimate relationship where you have true intimacy. And because this is a romance and there's nothing plot heavy in this is all internal, this is character driven, this is relationship driven, this is not a loud, hard hitting, fast trauma, kitchen sink trauma type of book, that is very popular, especially among the TikTok girlies, like, they really like those. This is much more subtle in that way, which is my preference. This feels like a romance that, for people who have been through things in life, I think that, in my opinion, I could very well be wrong, but I think that a very young reader who hasn't experienced very much life or heartache or sorrow or regret would have a difficult time connecting with this book. Not to say they wouldn't enjoy the steam, because this is an exceptionally hot book. So I think that even if you want a high level of heat in your books, you will definitely be satisfied here. But what makes that work for me, as someone who doesn't like just smut ever, the thing that makes that work here is the vast amount of emotional work that is done between these characters. This is a masterpiece of a book. It is absolutely beautiful. I was so completely invested in their romance. This is one of those romances that feels like a soulmate level love, that they were meant to be. This feels so just absolutely beautiful. I can't even get over it. So as I was wanting to talk about this, I think I wanted to come back to that intimacy, sharing intimacy with someone, and having it sort of evolve in a very gradual way, where you put a little bit of you know, you're vulnerable, so you share something with someone and you wait to see how that is going to be accepted by the other person. And when you realize it's safe, then you can share a little bit more and a little bit more. And that's really how their relationship grows and develops over time. But of course, because, you know, this is relationship driven, the conflict is going to have to happen. And I do feel like on a very basic level, you could say this is miscommunication. But this is one reason why I don't have a problem with miscommunication, is because usually the reason miscommunication happens is because that person is afraid to trust. For some reason, whether it's this current partner's fault or not, there is a reason this person is afraid to trust and share something that they think could hurt or harm this relationship, and they're so terrified of that happening they don't want to talk about it. That's exactly what's happening here in the third act conflict. It happens because of their own internal fears, things that they're working through that they just weren't able, or maybe, you know, other things happened along the line, like other characters were involved. It just didn't work for them to feel like they couldn't overcome that fear that they had. They couldn't overcome the fear of being that vulnerable with somebody until they did. They finally did. So I know I'm being vague. There is not a lot of plot here. This is just a beautiful, beautiful romance that I would say this is not super heavy on the grief. In the beginning it is, you know, but as the book moves on, even super heavy, it's not super heavy in the beginning. It is just such a beautiful, emotional, hot romance. I am flabbergasted. I have not seen anybody on BookTube or even Bookstagram talking about this. I've only seen this on TikTok. And I find that very interesting because this author has this actually was her debut book. I looked it up. This was published in January of this year. I am absolutely overwhelmed with love for this book. I think it's fantastic. This is easily a 6 out of 5 star for me. This was, without a doubt, one of my favorite books of the year. Definitely in the top 3 at this point. And the author has like 17K on TikTok, and that's where she built her following for this book. So this book doesn't have a ton of reviews. It's got like 3,000 ratings, I think. And I hope that this video inspires people to pick this up, because this is an author that I am going to just read every single thing that she has published. Like, I immediately downloaded book 2. It's on my October TBR. I'm going to be reading that ASAP. The characters that are in book 2 were mentioned in Restore Me. And I just think if you like emotional romances, if you want your romance to feel a little bit more like mature, like you don't necessarily want it to feel like a new adult 19-year-old romance, I would highly recommend this one. If you like your romances where they have to sort of work through both internal things themselves and as a couple, if you like angst, this is an angsty book. It's angsty in the form of, it's an internal type of angst. It's not angsty in the form of another woman or, you know, things like that. This is my specific brand of angst that I love. I just adored it so much. I can't even stop thinking about it. It was so beautiful. Absolutely. Just, this hero was fantastic, and Sloane was an excellent heroine too. Like, everybody talks about the heroes in romances because, you know, that's what we do. But she was also really, really fantastic. She was afraid to trust. She was afraid to try and live her life again, but she also still did it. Like, even though she was afraid to trust, she made the effort to do it. Even though she was afraid to get back out and date again or to do things with other people, like, she absolutely did it. I adored this book. It was long. It was almost 500 pages, but for me, it was well worth the read. I loved it. I loved it so much. I am so happy. And I do feel like this book has made me kind of eat my words about this sense of dissatisfaction that I've been feeling with the way romance book publishing has been happening this year, specifically in an indie romance way for my personal taste. I find it very, very difficult to find more books that are emotional in this way than more books. I feel like the majority of books, I've talked about this before, the majority of books that are being published are nothing but smut and tropes, all books have tropes, obviously, but tropes in a way that they're putting like this big basket of tropes in there, but they're not really effective at telling a story. It's just so that it can be marketed as this is tropes. And that's really why I'm very wary about reading books that are recommended only on tropes, because usually if a book is trope heavy, other things are going to be lacking, you know? So this book sort of made me reconsider that, because this is just absolutely phenomenal, and fantastic book. And honestly, I have felt this year, more and more as the year has gone on, like the way that I have felt so completely dissatisfied with not historical romances. I actually feel very satisfied with historical romances this year. But anytime I have tried to pick up a indie romance that is either hyped or whatever, specifically having been published this year or last year, I have just been deeply, deeply disappointed. I find them to be very surface level. I find them to lack character, substance, emotion, that I find myself feeling like, am I even a romance reader? Because what I'm looking for isn't what a lot of other people are looking for. I want to feel a little bit of pain. I want to feel emotion and power, and I don't get that just from sex. It just, unless it is very specific like this book, you know? And so I have honestly, like, that's one reason why I've been reading outside of romance, is because I'm like, I'm not getting what I want to get out of romance. I feel all of these are very mediocre to poor in the writing category. The romance feels non-existent to me. It's just smut. And honestly, there have been times where I've been like, I've read some of these books and I'm like, I can see why people would say romance is only porn, because honestly, a lot of them, that's how they read to me. And I don't want to read that. I want to read about the human experience. I want to read about what it's like to be human and how we get through this world, specifically how we do that through a relationship, through love and romance. And I don't feel like a lot of other readers have that same feeling. If you're watching this, you probably do, because you like my content, you like what I'm talking about. But I just felt so disappointed in the books, and even like books that are getting recommended, I just feel very let down. And that's why I'm like, am I even a romance reader? Like, a historical romance, always, 100%, I love it. But I sometimes need to, you know, freshen things up with different setting, different time periods, and that's why I like contemporary. I do like indie romance, but I don't like the way things are headed this year. A very specific example of that, which hopefully I didn't talk about in this video already, is Elizabeth O'Rourke. Really, really enjoyed her earlier books that didn't come out this year. Her book she published this year, I thought was absolutely terrible. I gave it 2 stars. It was everything that I said I hate. It was smut, and it was tropes, and that was it. And all of that substance and her beautiful writing and her emotion was gone. And I just was so absolutely disappointed with that. And I thought, if this is the way her books are going, I'm never going to read them again. It just... Anyway, this is a very long clip. My point is, Restore Me has proven to me that I love romance. I love books about relationships, but they have to be about more than just, you know. Anyway, this book was fantastic. 6 out of 5 stars. I loved it so, so much. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. I ordered a physical copy. I got the special edition. I'm going to end this clip here. Thank you for watching. And yeah, the Emma Scott was great. It was surprisingly lighthearted and fast to read. Much more lighthearted than Restore Me. Restore Me, oh my gosh, was just so beautiful. The angst was definitely there, but they were also happy for a lot of the book. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you coming back to my channel and bearing with me as I sort of try to put into words the way I've been feeling about reading and making content and consuming content and being in the book community, because it's on my mind all the time this year. I definitely feel like there's been a shift, and I want to figure out why, and mostly I want to find the books that I still love and resonate with, and I just have really not had a great time finding those. Except for this one. Restore Me was beautiful. So, alright my friends, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to leave me a pumpkin since it's October, I would like that, and I'll see y'all in my next video.